D'Angelo, you referred to yourself as a survivor there, but you're also executive director of the Peace Warriors in Chicago. How did you come to start preaching the gospel of nonviolence on the rough streets of Chicago?
In 2009, a woman by the name of Tiffany Childress Price founded something called the Peace Warriors. It was to combat disproportionate discipline within Chicago public schools, specifically charter schools. Later 2 years, coming in as a freshman, Tiffany Childress Price then tasked me to take it to the next level. And as a freshman, we have no idea of what that means. I laughed and walked away, as a young person would do anyway. And later in my junior year of high school, we then founded the Peace Warrior organization, separate from North Glendale College Prep, to combat gun violence, to support schools in culture reform and nonviolence initiatives.
How would you do that?
We took a group of young people, trained them in a philosophy called Kenyan nonviolence. And Kenyan nonviolence is a philosophy developed by Dr. Martin Luther King, in which he used throughout the civil rights movement. Our young people abided by 6 principles. The first being nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Sometimes when our young people walk away from fights, or even walk away when someone talks about them, they feel as if they're weak. No, you're strong. The second is the beloved community is a framework for the future, understanding that every individual has a vital role to play within our communities. The third, attack forces of evil, not the persons doing evil. There are some people who are not against each individual, but it's sometimes the institutions that we must pay attention to. It's sometimes the underrepresentation of marginalized populations, the under-resourced schools, and them being underrepresented, for I am underrepresented. Fourth, accept suffering without retaliation for the sake of a cause to achieve a goal.
That's tough. That's forgiveness.
Yes, it is. And that is one of the hardest things for young people to do, especially as being a gun violence survivor. It is the hardest thing.
You know, why don't you share that story with the audience? You were shot sitting on the front porch of your house.
Yes, ma'am. In August of 2017, while sitting on my very own front porch, I was shot along with my grandfather and 2 other family members and friends. As we were sitting on the front porch, just playing cards and having family conversation, the typical thing for us, because we're all goofy. My mother is the matriarch of our family. And so as sitting there having conversation, and this gentleman walks up and just randomly shooting. And so I tried to be the last person in the household because my sisters don't need me.
So you're trying to shield the others as you ushered them in the house.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So how representative is that of the violence that kids, young people in your city face every day as they're trying to get a good education?
Very often, young people face gun violence even when walking to school when it is unintended for them. And when we're having this conversation about gun violence, everyone goes directly to, actually a vast majority of individuals go directly to gang violence, when that is sometimes not the only aspect. Sometimes our young people have to supplement for single-parent households financially, even when they're not asked to. Sometimes our young people are trying to find a community to be a part of. Sometimes our young people are even trying to find ways to make ends meet, trying to make 10 cents become $1.
D'Angelo, I think it's so powerful that you, when you were called on last year after the shootings in Florida, in Lakeland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, you were called on to help, and you said, sure. But that couldn't have been easy. I mean, that shooting got international attention, and the kind of attention shootings in Chicago almost never get.
Let me be clear when I say this. People in Chicago are not jealous of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas individuals.
Of course.
And what we're saying is, we have your backs, but do you have our back? See.
How do they answer that?
See,
because you come from different places.
We come from different places. They've experienced gun violence within school one time. We've experienced gun violence that is considerably inevitable within the city of Chicago, especially in high populations of poverty-bound individuals or low-income populations. With meeting Emma Rodriguez, she was a beautiful young lady. She embraced us with hugs, love, but you can also see her tears. You can also see her despair. You can also see that she was hurt.
How do you They are very much, and I'm not saying all students, but many of the students, they're very focused on policy and on gun control to help keep students safer in schools. Where do you agree with them, and where do you diverge when it comes to that?
One thing that it is a part of the peace warrior work, as well as my personal self-belief, is that I believe that one, policy cannot solve everything. Politics cannot solve everything. Passion solves everything. Love solves everything. Let's use this for an example. When the shooting happened in Parkland, we were there. We went when former Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, called and said, hey, these young people need other young people like yourselves. Can you go? And immediately I said yes, because I know what our young people are dedicated to do. And this is a time that we as young people can arise together, because unity stands for us all. But the one problematic thing that we have yet to pay attention to is that their one instance of a school shooting does not account for the every life that's lost in the city of Chicago. Now, we do live by a life loss is a life loss. Mm-hmm. But right now we're saying that we need you to pay attention to the lives that are being taken away every single day, because our communities have lost hope.
What do you think of one solution, as a matter of fact, recently approved in Florida just last week? The governor signed a measure that will allow teachers to carry guns into the classroom. And this, even though educators in the state opposed it, as did officials in Broward County.
I am against it. I'm going to be very clear. Because when you look at an individual like myself, walking into a classroom and you have a male or female teacher or a non-binary teacher who is afraid of that individual, he or she may up a gun just in an instance, because your body is a threat. See, we sometimes forget to think about the image of a gun within these institutions, an institution that serves as an asylum, a safe haven. See, individuals that look like me, school was my safe haven. See, I found love, I found my passion, I found my purpose, I found my community within my school.
Well, and statistics even nationwide show that children are safer at school than anywhere else. Those who are shot, killed in gun violence, 17 and under in the U.S., 80% of those shootings occur outside of the classroom, in the home or on the streets.
Exactly. See, very, very few people pay attention to the 765 lives lost in 2016. Very few people pay attention to the Deshaun Moores, the Kevin Parkers, or et cetera within the city of Chicago that have been killed. But very often what you hear is they're gang members. No, these are children that needed an education, needed someone to guide them. That's what they needed.
I'd like the audience, I'd like you to start thinking of a question that you might want to give D'Angelo on Slido, so go ahead and input those. But in Colorado, where they had the shooting last week, I thought it was really interesting at a vigil when someone brought up gun control. Some of the students marched out and they were yelling, mental health, it's mental health. How big a factor do you think that is in your community and in communities nationwide?
Oh, mental health is a big factor. But one of the great things is, and one of the things that I've paid attention to as well as some young people is, and I want you to think about this and think about this deeply. We really only hear about the mental illness aspect when it comes to white individuals. When it comes to...
I see someone fist pumping back there. She agrees.
I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. But when it comes to black and brown bodies, it is often defined as intent to kill. See, it is not intent to kill. If we've had the resources that we've needed, if we had the adults, if we've had the men and the women that we've needed in the educational institutions to help our young people see their passion, their purpose, and fulfill their life's mission, then we wouldn't be in these situations at all.
So we have one question, D'Angelo. Do you support metal detectors in schools?
I do not. And here's my reason why. You take away the trust from our young people. See, John Horan, the former president of North Glendale College Preparatory High School, once said that when we institutionalize metal detectors, we are no longer prep, it is no longer college prep, but it becomes prison prep. I am not prepping my children for prison. I am only prepping my children for success. And if you want to institutionalize your metal detectors, please let me know so I can take my children out of your school.
D'Angelo, you know, in the year after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, 1,200 young people, 17 and under, were killed in gun violence in the United States. And I know Sunday was Mother's Day. If we're back here in a year talking about this same subject, do you think anything that we say will be able to give those 1,200 mothers hope? Do you think things will be better?
I think hope is a wonderful thing, but it can also be a deficit. But I don't think that there's anything that we can give mothers hope anymore, because one of the biggest forms of violence is hopelessness. Because very often these mothers trust in systems that have often failed them and their children. But what I can say is these mothers need to have faith in our young people. Because when you have faith in young people, things can change. See, we're used to having things our way immediately. See, I have a cell phone, I have an iPhone. And so very often things are at the palm of my hand. And if things fell in this app, I need to go to this app. If things fell in this application, I need to find a different way to reform and revitalize it. And so to my mothers, I want to say, I see you and I understand you, and I welcome you to join us, but strategize and then we can make things happen.
Please join me in thanking D'Angelo McDade, a peace warrior on the road to victory.